Hello, I hope all is well. I've had quite a crazy week. I thought I'd just do a quick video doing two things, which is a recap of Guitar Summit, which was last week, and then the last couple of days, which have been absolutely mental here in Luxembourg. So Guitar Summit last week, it was, 3 days, very busy, especially the Saturday. If you're thinking of going and you want maybe a slightly quieter experience, I'd heartily recommend either the Sunday or the Friday, as Saturday has the most people come along to check out everything, as there's also concerts in the evening as well. And speaking of concerts, a particular highlight was seeing Philip Sace finally, who I've only seen through videos, who I think is absolutely incredible. One of my highlights in terms of shows, and also Joey Landreth, who put on a really nice show on the Friday evening. Now, some quick highlights of Guitar Summit, and they're not even gear related per se, but it was just simply some of the people I got to meet. So meeting old friends, making new friends as well, thanks to, YouTube, this platform, and what I get to do here. And also a couple of people in the industry that I just didn't think I'd run into or I'd meet by chance. And I'll start off there with Stephen Fryette, who I met on, I think it was, Thursday evening when I arrived a day earlier. And thanks to Joe Wyatt, who was there as well. Check out his channel, Passion for Tone. And it was kind of funny, and I was almost slightly starstruck per se, which, I meet a lot of artists in the job that I do. And here was just, someone who'd made one of my favorite ever amps, which is sitting in the back there, which is a VHT Deliverance 60. Still exists under Fryette now, so there's a Fryette Deliverance 2, slightly different voicing, updated features and things like that. But just to meet someone who's put out all these incredible amps and products and things like that over the years, and thought of these things from the ground up, was just one of those things where I was like, this is amazing. So getting to talk to him, just give, kudos where it's due, was just really cool. And in no particular order, I was really lucky to meet Jim Dunlop while I was checking out the Algam stand, where they had Dunlop products. They also had, I think, Kernan were there, and they also had Hiwatt. And I was asked, I was like, hey, would you like to meet Jim Dunlop? I wasn't going to pass that up. And got to talk to him and immediately started talking about picks, because I said, when I started guitar, the first, or electric guitar, the pick I used, it was a green Tortex 88mm. And it was like, so what pick do you use now? So I, reached into my pocket and brought out the pick I use now, which is Tortex 88mm, the wedge. It's white, which makes it great for seeing when you drop it on the floor or in other places. And I gave him the pick just to show it to him, and then I know for some reason I just said, you can keep that one, which was just something really random to say. And they, everyone in the booth kind of laughed and stuff. And I think he found it quite funny as well, because I saw him later on the show and he said hi again, which was really cool. And then I got to meet Klein from Line 6. So I saw him walking through the summit on the Friday and just stopped to say hello and basically thank him for some of the stuff that he's made over the years or developed. So, the M9, this is a really old Line 6 product. It was something that was on my board for the longest time. And then things like, all the work that's been going on with Helix Stadium, of course, and basically the sort of commitment to the community and development and things like that is something that I've really appreciated from what I've been able to see, and him going into videos, commenting on those, asking for feedback, and engaging in discussions just to kind of get a feel of what people are after in an effort, I feel, to further improve what they're doing. And I just thought that was great. And also him taking the time to, stop and talk to me about all sorts of stuff, not just gear and things like that, but also music and kind of life in general and stuff like that. And obviously one of the big ones in the show, I think at least, was the presence of Helix Stadium. So for the first time, you could see it in the flesh, per se. You could check it out and also listen to it and play it. So my impressions of the Helix Stadium, as I did get to try it out for a short while on the first day. I made a video, or a longer video, on the feature set and things like that, which I will link above. And in essence, the thing is, in these sorts of environments, it's not something super easy to get a perfect point of reference, if that makes sense. And my point of reference is essentially the stuff that I already use. So the last sort of, I guess, Line 6 modeling device I used would have been a Pod HD 500, which is, well, that's quite some time ago. And I guess most Helix users would really be able to, see the difference between, oh, this is my Helix, these are like the models, the new models, and then the cabs, which might already exist and things like that, and to see how things have developed and improved at that level. But for me, I was basically, listening to it, playing it from the my perspective, which was, hey, my main rig's a Fractal FM3, my backup rig is, well, the Nano Cortex, and yep, I've got Tortex as well. I play around with that. I've captured my amps and things like that. So I have a good idea of what, I want at least to hear and play and feel in the response of, say, a modeling device. And the thing here is that I'm not testing this with my guitar. It's not my setup. I was testing it with a Yamaha Revstar that was off the wall. It had really light strings. I think it must have been like 9 to 42s, P90s. It's a decent guitar by all means, but not something that, that I have at home, one, and two, like that I really would play. And second, just playing through headphones, because that's not something I typically do at home either. When I'm checking out tones, it's usually through studio monitors. Now, some of the things with the Helix Stadium while I was trying it out. So the screen is really nice. It's very snappy, so moving around and finding what you're trying to do was super easy. The navigation was great, and one of the highlights that I thought was the focus mode, which at first glance, like, okay, this is kind of cool. And if you have some idea of an amp already, or a pedal or something else where you kind of know the sweet spots, it might not be something that you really use, because, well, you can try it out and you'll see, oh yeah, well, I can sort of understand what it's doing here. So to make this amp maybe tighter sounding, I would do those same kind of moves, but it's interesting nonetheless. But I think where it really kind of comes into play is maybe for amps or other things where you might be looking for some extra ideas or inspiration, or have some idea of like, oh, so for this amp, which might have a completely different kind of tone stack or setup, might be a much darker amp or things like that, that when you're using, say, focus mode to get different kind of a vibe of sounds by using those like XY pad in the middle, you'll get a different approach and it'll already point you in the right direction. So you can see by moving on the XY pad to, say, a brighter, tighter, whatever kind of sound, you'll see like the parameters change and give you some idea, okay, this amp reacts this way with these kind of changes. And it's a really kind of different way of dialing an amp, and that was really kind of cool and fun to see. Now, one thing here is, I'm not sure if this is the final firmware that will be on the release devices. I think it might have been 1.2, the firmware that was on there, at least when we tried to look at the statistics on there, as you could hit one of the buttons and then you get this like statistics mode. So you could see how much the CPU is being used, the temperature and things like that. And then you could also see the firmware or software version that was loaded. I'm not sure if that button was meant to be that. It kind of, it had a target icon on there. So was that meant to be for that? Or is it maybe for the, the capturing that is set to come sometime in the future? Who knows? So with that in mind, I brought up a brand new preset and did a very basic kind of setup. So I wanted to see how one of the new amp models felt under the fingers. So I loaded up, I think it was the British Plex, or one of those new Marshall Agora modeling amps that are on the unit. And then put that through one of the, it must have been the Greenback 25 cabs. And I set it up to be like a stereo. So one cab, hard pan, left and right. And then use the same mic on both, which was like a 57, as that's typically what I kind of do when I'm setting up like a stereo sound. That's the kind of thing I quite like to do. And then just loaded up sort of like my kind of go-to settings to see how the amp would respond, especially with dynamics and rolling back the volume on the guitar, and then seeing how it reacted to when you're actually playing in terms of feel and response. Now, the good news is it reacted really well, I think, but my problem was that I had no real point of reference to, say, a previous Helix product. So for me, it's like, well, compared to what I'm used to on, say, a Fractal device where, I'm used to that modeling, I can say. The thing here was, you know, while I can't say, oh yeah, it's just as good or better, I can't do that because it's not on my system. It was certainly good. I mean, I got the response that I would be after from an amp model like that. So digging in a bit more, you get a bit more give and gain from the amp, and then you could pull back on the volume knob and it'd clean up quite nicely, to be honest. And to add on top of that, I think line 6 effects, you know, are really good, to be honest, especially the amount of effects that you have on offer. And the really cool thing is they also offer all those legacy effects. So like I was saying before, I used to own an M9. I've got HX1 on a small pedal board that I use for kind of loops and other kind of stuff. And just having those old school effects, I'm a big fan of, say, the particle verb, is really great to be able to have these kind of older tones. And then a whole host of new effects so that you can go kind of crazy with the sort of effects that you're going to use in all sorts of creative ways. Now, something I noticed was when you're changing presets, there's a noticeable kind of gap between preset switching. Yes, there's snapshots. Again, this is maybe not the final release firmware, but that was something I noticed on the device that was, well, on test, shall we say. And the other thing was when the unit boots up, it takes quite a bit of time to turn on. I mean, we're talking maybe, must have been well over a minute, maybe a minute and a half till it fully booted up. And again, this might be due to like the software that was on there or the device in question, and maybe the final release unit will be different, at least the ones that will be released in the next weeks, months time. So huge thanks and shout out to John from Sonic Drive Studios, who has been like really good in sort of getting various people from the guitar YouTube space kind of connected and get to meet each other, because while it might not look it, you know, a lot of this is very lonely. So, you know, we're working on videos in isolation, we're editing and stuff in isolation, and it's only when the video is actually finally released that there's that kind of community or social aspect to it, where we get views and people looking at what we're doing, commenting and things like that, and then we get some kind of feedback. But outside of that, typically, you know, you're kind of by yourself. So thanks to just like the simple fact of being able to talk to other people in the YouTube space doing the same thing, exchange ideas or thoughts and things on like thumbnails, titles and things like that, is a really, really huge thing, especially for, you know, a small channel such as mine. So huge thanks and shout out to John for that. And it was great to meet all these other channels that, you know, I've talked to over the last year that I finally got to meet in person that were at Guitar Summit. And then finally, in the last 2 days, you know, this is the Sunday, 5th of October, in Luxembourg, we had something called Throonwissel. So the previous Grand Duke has abdicated and passed on, the title, the throne, to his son, Guillaume. But there was loads of stuff that happened yesterday, culminating in this huge concert in the Glacis here in Luxembourg. And I'll show some footage and some pictures of the stage, but it's this huge 360 stage in essentially the middle of Luxembourg. Yesterday evening there was this huge crowd that showed up for this show, which was streamed live as well. I'll try and put some links below if you want to have a look. And so I got to play with Tali, which is this really amazing pop artist from over here. I'll link to her stuff as well. I'll do some more videos on the sort of sound presets and things like that I've done for playing gigs with Tali, as I think that might be quite interesting. And a huge thanks to Tali for, you know, inviting me or asking me to play on something like this, and Sergio as well. As you know, this is not something that I get to do every day, so it's definitely not something that I take for granted. And the thing is, this is easily like the biggest show I've ever played, and it was just absolutely bonkers. I mean, the rehearsals that we did the day before, you know, you kind of have that anticipation like, oh my God, yeah, this stage is absolutely huge. But on Friday, you know, the weather wasn't great. It was really cold outside. We did, you know, different runs of the show that was going to happen on the Saturday, you know, with sound checks, checking through the song, camera positions and things like that, because this was like a big live streamed event. And, you know, you had some idea of like, okay, you know, it's in the cold. I have some idea of what you know, where I'm placed. Choreography, I don't know if that's the right word, but where you're placed during the show. And then how things are filmed afterwards, well, you'll see that on the day, essentially, because you'll see the end result. And then going from that to actual show day, where, you know, you get to go out and you perform one song. In this case, it was Fighter from Tali. And suddenly there's loads and loads of people, and the whole thing is over in like a blip. Like, you get on stage and you're just full of like adrenaline, basically, because there's all these people. It's super loud, and like people are really into it because, you know, it looked and sounded really great, you know, watching stuff there. And it was just absolutely crazy. So, and I'm still kind of reeling from it, because not only did I get to, you know, be on stage and play something like that, but it was also to share the stage with lots of fellow musicians and friends from Luxembourg, and then to be able to share this kind of common experience and this crazy experience with them on a day such as that was just like, yeah, cherry on the top. So a huge thanks to Tali and Sergio for being able to do something like that, and also for all the organisation behind that event, as it's something that's, you know, it's a once-in-a-lifetime event. And yeah, I'm just super grateful to be able to get to do something like that. In any case, hope you got something out of that. There's loads and loads of new content planned and some exciting things coming up. And yeah, watch this space basically. And I hope to see you in the next video. Take care.